Ches. Let's just read a little Hakdama because we really were very close to the beginning of the new part. He said, "Mekaven shehizkir inyan haroshel Erich Anpin." Since we mentioned the head of Erich Anpin, Mevor shagam hamuach elyon. It's not clear to me what the muach elyon is at this point. Atzmo nikra rosh. So the moach, he says, the upper moach is called the head. Chachma law the ihu resha. So he says the upper chachma is called resha. Chachma ha'elyon shal keser de Erich Anpin. So I'm assuming he means that one of the spheres of Erich Anpin called chachma. So he says afal bisha b'chinas ruach, even though it's an aspect of ruach. Ha'b'chinas shavas b'chinas rosh. V'gulgalos v'yachas. So he says that it's considered to be like a skull at the top of the head. V'yachas v'erich lemuach hatachton she'erich Anpin. It's considered to be what part of the head, even if we talk about it, the lower moach. What's the lower moach and the upper moach? B'yom bei sasim ki hu stumel. That is the lower moach. He says ki hu stumach b'petoch b'rosh hagulgalos Erich Anpin v'nechshav kechelech min keser v'harosh. Is considered to be a part of the rosh. V'tachen ki nikras gam came rosh, so therefore it's also called rosh. V'yikrech b'muchas law, and it's called the upper moach. V'nikras gam moach ha'elyon b'yachas v'erech. The Rosh HaGulgalos Erich Anpin, so therefore it's called what? The Ikri, because of its relationship to the head, to the skull of Erich Anpin, Ki hi hamuach hapanimi shel HaGulgalos, which is the muach hapanimi of the Gulgalos. I'm not sure. We lost the context here exactly where this goes. So he says now, in contrast to that, this is the muach elyon. So I'm assuming once again that it's in some way, it's not clear to me what it is. Hamuach hatachton shel Erich Anpin, hanikra muach stimah. So this is it. This is easier to understand. We understand. I know that. Hu muach d'shakik v'shakik. It's a muach that quiets everything down. Muach shachadinim shokichim. They quiet v'shokitim. Shut up. Sham. Ki yesh bo dinim mekoach gevura da'atik, because the dur da'atik is lodged in the muach stimah. So it has dinim within it as a result of that. Some is lavish bow, which is closed in it. Elo shuchun nikfin v'nim takim sham b'koach Erich Anpin, but there they are humbled and sweetened because of the koach of Erich Anpin. Ein hamuach hatachton domid l'muach elyon. So in this sense, when we talk about these two mochim, one is up above, one down below. Shebekesser Erich Anpin, ki hamuach elyon ein bara b'dinim klal. It's completely and totally pure. V'chatam, I'm not sure exactly what he means. So he says, v'chatam shehamuach hu nikra muchas stimos. Says this is called the closed up muach. Who list the yad, nobody really knows where it is or what it is because it's hidden. Ki ein misha yodechu masik eshefer hamuach hatachton. So that. Ki hu sansum umuchusa, so it's covered up, closed up, at bekuma with a crust. It's a crust over it. You can't get to it. Bar ihu, except for Erich Anpin. Chutz min rosh Erich Anpin, except for the head of Erich Anpin, of course, is aware of what's inside of it. Shemizgala b'shefer hamuach hatachton bedikna shalom. That factually, ultimately, what's inside of it is revealed in the beard. Okay, let's go over now. We'll start a new section. And it says, Tlas Ration is galpin. So it carved out. I use this word carved out. 3 heads are carved out. Shlosha Roshim, La'olam Atzilus. There are 3 heads to Olam Atzilus. Nehech Kuchu V'nisakno. So they're carved out. They're built B'chatika Kadisha HaKlali. So there, he says, there's a general concept of Atika Kadisha. Shehem Echad. So now he wants to label the Roshim. He says the first one is because of Rosh Atik Yomim Hanikra Racial Isyada. That's the first one, is the head, unknowable head. So number base is Gulgalta, Gulgolas, the Erich Anpin. This is the skull of Erich Anpin, Hanikra Atika Kadisha, which is called Erich Anpin once again, Atika Kadisha. Bepratos, this is the specific skull of Erich Anpin. So there are the Rosh of Erich Anpin. Number 3 is HaChochma Shel Erich Anpin, HaNikra Mochas Dimos, and then there's the Chochma, which is also called part of the Rosh, or the Rosh, a Rosh, and it's the Mochas Dimos. So let's start talking. He says about these 3 Rishonim. We'll start with the one on the bottom. Da lugo min da, and the way that they're built is that one is really inside of the next. Shnei roshim atachtonim shehin hagugolta. So he says that the gugalas and the muslima are the 2 lower roshim. The hakakov v'desakta lifnim mizeh. So they're carved out. They are put into a formation, I guess, of this to mizmayat, the light. One is inside of the next. So it enters, and now this is interesting, he says it enters in and is clothed inside of the Gugolta. So it sounds like the Gugolta is there first, okay? About that, and then the Moch comes into it. Below the Eila Mendo. Rosh Atik Yomim, who Ma'al Shnei Haroshim, then there's another head which is up above the other 2, as we know. Shel Erich Anpin, that is the Atik Yomim. That is the parts of that we don't know about. Ve'ein Rosh Atik Yomim mislavish begugolta de Erich Anpin, but there is no contact between the skull of Zer Anpin and the Rosh of Atik Yomim, because it's he says it's not clothed within it. Ki ein bi'cholas begugolta de Erich Anpin lahalvish v'lahatpis ha'or shel Rosh Atik Yomim, because what's his words? The skull has no ability to clothe and to actually grab a hold of or hold the light that's coming from Atik Yomim, Machmas Rov Ruchnis or Rosh Atik Yomim, because the light is just too thin or it's too ruchadik. So he says Reish Echado, so one of the heads, Rosh Echad, Mahashlosha Roshim, Vuha Rosh Hatatam Anikra Muchstimah. Let's talk about that one, he says. Chachmastas Nimah. So this is a steam. This is he says Hu Muach HaChachma. So it's the Muach called Chachma, and it's Stuma Shel Erich Anpin, which is Hastuma, which is closed up inside of Erich Anpin. V'atam Shenikra Kain. So the reason why it's called this, Hu Mishom is Kasya, because it's covered over. Shu Sasoch Bekusa Bekrum. It has a crust around it, which makes it's impenetrable to be able to get into it. V'lav mispatcha ve'eder niftach b'bender nesivachos shvilim. There are no other open or paths, another those trails that the light can come out through. It's completely 100% closed. He's saying komo muach hachachma, just like the muach hachachma. 1 second. Shel Zer Anpin, which, for example, does have all kinds of channels coming out of it. Wait a second. Shel Zer Anpin, Shepatuach l'shloshim b'shtachim b'sivas Chochma, which is opened up to the 32 paths of Chochma. For Chochma Sadas Nimah, but this Chochma is totally clothed. Reishach, called Reishin, the Shar Chochmos. So he said, Chochma Nimah, Chazos, Nikra Rosh. It's called the head. It's like a beginning. Lefish he harosh to call a roshin, because it's the beginning of all the heads. Ki hachachmos, because the chachmos themselves of all the partsufim. Shal shar partsufi hatzilus. Nimshachim mispashim mimenu. They all develop out of this. Now he says the word nimshachim, they stream out, and mispashim, they spread out from the mokstimah mimenu. He yos bihi hachachma harishona, because this is the original chachma. Shel Olam Hatzilus, in other words, it's the source of all the other chachmas. That's what he says, they're built around this. So he says, Harosh Hasheni. Now let's go to the second head. Shuhu Gugolta, which refers to the skull. The Erich Anpin. Reisha Law, it's the upper head. Hu Rosha Elyon. We call it the upper head. Why? Ki Hu Omed Me'al Harosh, because actually it's above the head. Harosh HaTachton Shuhu Muchstimah. In other words, it's up above. So he calls it the top one, because inside the head itself are these 2. It's the Gugalas and the Muchstimah. So the Gugalas, which is the skull, is on top of it surrounds the Muchstimah, and we call the Shlosha Roshim and the Kroim Yachad the Atik Kedisha. So these 3 Mochin together, these 3 Roshim together, are called Atik Kedisha. He came ha-keser ha-klali, because that's the concept of keser when we talk about Erich Anpin. Rosh Hasheni, this second Rosh we're talking about, Shuhuku Golos de Erich Anpin, is the skull of Erich Anpin, Hu Hanikra Bepratos Atika Kadisha. This is when we say, is that true? That he wants to say that this is the part that's really called Atika Kadisha? Ki Hu HaKeser Shel Erich Anpin, because this is actually talking about the very top, the crown of Erich Anpin. V'kol keser b'nikra atika kadisha. So the every crown is called by the same name. The tops of all of the partsufim. V'hu stimit to call stimit. Salsa v'ne'ela miyosa b'shar kol stumim. So then it's closed up and it's more hidden than all the other hiddennesses. I'm not sure what that meant, if he was comparing it to the Muchas Timor, or exactly why he said that this is more hidden. I guess he means it's more panimi. So Rosh Hashlishi Shuhu Rosh Atik Yomim. Let's talk about the head of Atik Yomim now. So he says Hakoilo. So it has within it Besochu called the Shlosha Mochim. So this one has within it all of the three Mochim. Shabarosh Shehem Chachma Bina Das Atik Yomim. So that is that there is a Chabad of Atik Yomim. Resha to call Resha, and this is the ultimate Resha. Who are Rosha called a Roshim. Va'av shal Erich Anpin, even if you compare it to the Rosh of Erich Anpin. Ki kol Rosh Partzuf Eratzilus nimshachu v'ne'atzlu memenu, because he says the Roshim, now we talked about how this works, is that the Roshim all come out of the gar of Atika Kadisha. Resha the love Resha, but the trouble is that it's a head, it's not a head. V'nikro Rosha ain't a Rosh. So in one way we say, well, this is actually the beginning of Atzilus. Because this is the root of where everything is manifest in Atzilus. But there's another way to look at it. It's not called the Rosh Atzilus. Why? Because there's a Devekus with the Ein Sof Baruch Hu, which is very powerful, that you don't have other places in Itzilus. And there, as a result of that, it is Panimi, or on top of the Partsufim of Itzilus. The Rosh v'Haschala the Partsufim of Itzilus, but it's not at the same time the beginning, he says, and the beginning of the Partsufim of Itzilus. So it is and it isn't. It's a Shorish, but on the other hand, it's not a part. Below Yada, then it's not known. Rosh al Atik Yomim, the Chabad of Atik Yomim, Ba'atzmo, Einu Masig Es or Ein Sof Baruch Hu, Hamislavish Bo. Let me read this again. The Rosh al Atik Yomim, so we talk about the head. Ba'atzmo, by itself, Einu Masig does not reach the light of the Ein Sof Baruch Hu, Hamislavish Bo, which is Panimi to it. Just the same way it's very difficult for a person to touch his neshama. He says it's hidden inside of you. And it's not known what you have here in the side of this head. The light that's inside of it, it's not something that we can, it has no tangibility, and so therefore we can't reach it. In the Musa, the Partzuf Chatzilos, none of the Partzuf Chatzilos have an idea of what is there, because it's very little physicality. And then, of course, we have in the Zat the hismatus of that ore. So we would say, well, that's becoming more physical. The Erich Anpin and even though the hismatus, but in Erich Anpin, which is a direct recipient, it has no real idea what's going on. So its light does not cling. So it doesn't cling to either one of those. I'm not sure why he said that. Abba and Ima, he's been talking about the relationship to Erich Anpin. Now he went to Abba and Ima, ki ein or Rosh Atik Yomim, because what we want to say is the light of Atik Yomim, Meir Aleichem, does not shine, does not reach to Abba Ima. It only reaches apparently to Erich Anpin. Excuse me, I said it wrong. Ki ein ora rosh atik yomim meir aleichem ella al yedei chislavshos barosh Erich Anpin. So my mistake. So it doesn't go directly into the lower partsufim. It's inside of Erich Anpin, and the only way that light is transferred is through Erich Anpin. V'al ikri on this is we say like this: Rosh Atik Yomim. It really refers to this pasuk, the end of the pasuk, Baruch Lucha El Makomacha. Run away to your place. Koloma Baruch Shasichlecha. Let your mind run away. V'harchek Atzmacha, and also distance yourself a Malayan bow to try to figure out what it is, to try to understand or get a picture in your mind of what it is. Because it's not in any dimension that we can understand. So therefore you have this pasuk in Yechezkel. So the interesting thing that he says about this, because we see that the Chayas HaKodesh, we talk about this, he says, Kolomer, now he says the Mochin are Chayos. He says, so ultimately, maybe what he's saying was say like this, is that if I'm trying to pray and I'm trying to get close to Hashem, I'm trying to really reach that place, because that's where the Ein Sof is. He says, Mochim Hanikram Chayos, Ratzin La'ayin, so they go and they run to try to reach Atik Yomim, V'lahasik Bo, to get an appreciation of it, Miyad Heim Shavim, but that's not possible. They bounce off, or immediately they go backwards, because you can't get there. There is no dimension in our thinking that could match it. Okay, then, so therefore, Kach Atika Kadisha Ikre Ayin. So therefore, Atika Kadisha is called nothing. Atika Kadisha Shuhu Rosha Elyon Shel Atik Yomim. So here now we're talking about, here he's applying the word Atika Kadisha again. I could just throw out what we saw in the Tiv, that he said it refers to, and actually this is the area of the Eitz Chaim we didn't really spend a lot of time on, is the fact that there are, each of the Partsufim have a female aspect to them. So that's what the Tiv said. The Tiv says that Atik Yomim refers to Zachar Banuk of Erich Anpin. So he said, let's go back. Anyway, Shuhu Rosh Elyon Shel Atik Yomim. So this is the upper head of Atik Yomim. Nikrucha b'shem Ein, Ayin, or it's nothing. V'chatam hu, what's the reason? Debei Talya Ayin. B'shum Shabo Ne'echaz V'nisla HaRosh HaTachtom HaNikra Ayin. So he says this is where the lower Rosh is located. Shu Hamuach Apanimi, which is the Muach that's inside Shal Keser Shal Erich Anpin Hanikra Avira. So let me see, I'm getting lost here a little bit. He says inside of the Rosh Tachton, which is Shu Hamuach Apanimi Shal Keser Shal Erich Anpin Hanikra Avira. So there's this place inside of the skull of Erich Anpin, which is called the Avira. Bal Shemo Nikra Gam Rosha Elyon B'Shem Ayin B'Derech Hashayla. So they use that idea to apply this to what? To this area inside of the Rosh, which is called the hair. V'chatam Sha'avira B'Nikra Ayin. So why should this be called Ayin? Why should we call nothing? Who Mishum to call Inan Sari, because all of the hairs, v'kol Inan Nimim, and all the bundles of hairs, Memuchas Timah Nafkim, they all come out of this Muchas Timah, which we said is hidden, closed up inside of the head. Shekol Osem Asa'arod, v'kol Osem Animim, that is a Gudushal Sayer. Shebarosh Erich Anpin Yotzim Mahavira B'Betoch Animim V'Asaros. So he says all of this, the Rosh of Erich Anpin, he says, what is it? We call Osem Animim. So they all come out of this area of Hasaros, the hairs, Ovrim Gam Oros Hayotze Memuchstimah. So through the hairs also come out this Shefa, which is inside of the Muchstimah. And because of these bundles of hairs and the hairs themselves, Nikra Avira B'Shem Ayin. That's the reason why it's called Ayin. I really don't see the metaphor here between the ayin and the hairs, but I'm going to go on. V'kulhu She'im, and all of these hairs we're talking about are smooth. V'kol Ha'aretz Chim Chalokim Barakim, and soft. Hamorim al Bechinas Rachamim, which is to tell you that in Erich Anpin there's an aspect of Rachamim. It's nice and easy. Kihem Mitzad Chesed, because they come from the Chesed of Atik Yomim. Hamislavish Barosh Erich Anpin, which is in the Golgotha of Erich Anpin, and it's closed there. V'lechem Heim Gam B'Shikula. So they're also the same length, or the same size, same length. Shavim B'Shikul Echot The Hainish Ein Seir Echad Arach Yosech Mechaveru. None of them are longer than the next. They're all working evenly. Below is Chaze Kadlo. V'ein Nira Ha'oref. So the back of the neck is also not seen. There shall Erich Anpin. Machbes Aros, because of these hairs. Ki Ha'oref Mechusach B'Pa'ar B'Nimim, because the back of the neck is covered over with 4 different bundles of hair. That is Aguda Shal Seir. Hayorde Ma'achre Rosha, which come down on the back of his head. Kadei Shelo Yankol B'Sham HaKlifo, so the klipa should not be able to go to the back of the neck of Erich Anpin. Kulahu. V'chakol hu b'chinas rachamim. So everything that's there is for the purpose of rachamim. Begin the high atika kadisha b'chad chavi. So he said b'shum shezeh atika kadisha. Talking once again about Erich Anpin, who ba'achdus shleima is in a complete state of oneness, shal rachamim, which is the oneness of mercy, below din without any din klal. Kula b'chedu, all of us are done in simcha, v'kulam kuba b'chinas simcha, v'lucha v'shan yamirachme la'almim, v'eina mishtane. It never stops being a rachmanas, mishtane rachmim the din la'olam. Okay, I guess this is where we stop today. Thank you so much for learning with me, and nice to have you back. Call too.